So yeah, this episode opens with the gang around a campfire as someone tells a campfire story, which I think it's super interesting that
I
this
do love
episode
this.
opens with them around other people. We like never get that really. Like it always,
You're so right. It's always them on their own and then stumbling upon other people. This is we're
yeah,
in the
like
middle of them
just being
already
around
with
a
people.
campfire. It's such an odd thing, and like it makes sense to like kickstart this story because he's telling a story of these airwalkers that are like flying
Mhm.
people, and they assume that he's speaking about legends of airbenders. And I love the little bit where like Aang is like, "Oh, these are great," and Katara's like, "Is this really how it is?" And Aang's like, "Oh yeah, I laugh at gravity all the time," and he's like, "Gravity, ha 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 ha,"
He's like
which is just
stupid
like,
gravity.
it's
It's
such a
so
dumb,
good.
funny joke. Like it's great. Um,
I love the dumb jokes in this show. They're good.
yeah, and so they talk about it, and then the guy mentions that he saw the Airwalkers last week, and so they're like, "Well, obviously we need to investigate this," because Aang's like, "There's no way." Um,
Yeah.
so they go and they fly to the Northern Air Temple, which, as we were just talking about, looks amazing. Such cool design.
Such
Um,
beautiful design.
Aang is like hopeful to possibly see airbenders, and they see people flying around, but Aang immediately is
Hmm.
like, "Those aren't airbenders." He's like,
He's like, they
"Frauds."
don't have the spirit.
Yeah,
Frauds.
he's just immediately like, nope, they're faking, not real. And he's like, they're gliding, not flying. And so then Aang starts like showing off, like beside one of the kids who's gliding around, and like is just very bitterly like, I can do all this better than you. Like you suck. I'm.
He's such a child here.
Yeah, he's such a kid where he's just like he's so angry doing it the whole time too. Like he's just grumpy and like, oh yeah, but watch this.
He's like, yeah,
Um,
but I can do this. So,
yeah,
and I
so
love
like
it
you
that the
suck
kid we
actually.
learn his name is Teo. He's like, oh, cool. I can also do that.
Yeah, like
Like
the kid
not
is so
feeding
like
into Aang's anger.
yeah, like he's just also like hyped and is like, oh sick, like this is fun. Where I like have a buddy that I'm
Yeah.
now like doing tricks with and stuff. And Aang is just like this stupid. I'm gonna. And he's just
Yeah.
he's just he's
So
so
mad.
mad. And then Teo draws Aang's face in the sky with smoke, which is
I
hilarious.
love it. And it's his exact reaction.
Yeah, like you see his face and then it
Great
cuts to
bit.
Aang's face and it's the same face. It's fantastic. The visual comedy in the show is honestly just unmatched.
It's
Like it's
so
so
good.
good.
Great bits, no
Th-
comments needed.
There was
They're
also the
perfect.
bit
10 out of 10.
prior to this when they're still at the campfire and like they don't have any money for the storyteller and he like
Huh.
drops one of the coins and Momo picks it up and like hands it to like puts it in the hat and the dude is
Yeah, and
like,
the
"Oh,
guy's
thanks
like,
so much."
he's like, what a reformed gentleman or something.
He's like, "Thanks."
Something
He's
that
like, "Thanks so much, bat creature."
bat creature though. So he calls him a little
which
bat
is
creature.
so good.
So
So
cute.
yeah, like at the air temple, they all like land and stuff, and that's when we meet Teo, and he's in a wheelchair, which is so cool that he's like
Yeah.
in a wheelchair and flying around and doing all this stuff. Like honestly, very like great rep for a show that was like
I
mid two
know.
thousands. Like that's good on them for that one.
Good on them. Yeah.
Like that's great to see. Um, so we get that. He's super excited to meet an airbender, and he's like, "Oh, you're actually an airbender," and then he's like, "Oh, well, you must be the Avatar," because like obviously, which
Obviously,
always
that's if there's one, that's him.
I always think it's so funny how readily he's willing to
Everybody just
just like
accept that.
well that, but like the how um open Aang is to just like exposing himself constantly as being the Avatar. Like you would
Yeah.
think that they would want to keep that a little bit more close to the chest
Hmm.
at times, but he just like doesn't. And I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense if they're like they're at the
At
Northern
this
Air
point,
Temple. So
yeah.
like if there's gonna be airbenders left, they would be here. So he'd want to,
Because we see it in
treat
like
them or
one of
whatever.
the earlier, it's like one of the first or second episodes when they're like, "Are you the Avatar?" And he looks to Katara and he's like, "Should I tell
Yeah,
them?"
yeah,
And
and
she's
she's
like,
like, yeah, you can
"Yeah,
do it. Yeah,
yeah."
which is great. But yeah,
And now
it
he's
always just
like,
makes
"I
me
can tell
laugh where
people.
he's just like, yeah, like just immediately he's like, oh yeah, I'm the Avatar. And it's like, all right, man.
Like I
Well,
can
like
trust these people."
you
Yeah,
got like the bad guys in this world hunting you, but sure.
but sure, let's just
uh,
tell everybody you're here.
so we learned that Taylor's dad is the one who has designed everything. When we should note here, his dad does not get a name in this.
Yes, at all.
He's like not
He's
named. He's not.
referred to in documents as the Mechanist. Like online,
Yeah,
he's referred to as the Mechanist, though in the show.
yeah. So his dad is the one who's designed everything here. Teo takes them inside the temple, and I really the like shot of them going inside the temple and the way everything is animated is like so impressive and also so heartbreaking. And the show does a
Yes.
really good job of showcasing both of those sides of it, because like it is super impressive to see, and you're like, wow, because it's this huge, like it's
Hmm.
all like steam and air powered and like this industrial,
It's all
just giant,
intact, but
yeah, like it's crazy,
mhm.
but then it's also like destroying what the temple was. And like I you can see it on Aang's face, the way the shots are framed, you really get that feeling. And then you also have the lines from Aang being like, this is supposed to be the history of my people. And
Oh,
like you
that
have the
broke my
pipe.
heart.
It's so
Mm-hmm.
sad. It's so sad. And you see it as like the pipes are like going through the faces of the
Mm-hmm.
different monks, and it's like, oh man, like it's so sad. And
Like
so
that's
like they
ancient, like that's an ancient relic at this point, and
yeah. And
you've
like it
destroyed it.
really, this episode, the like big thing, the big theme going through this one is like
Hmm.
industrialization and how that will take over the natural world, and like
Yeah.
how progress there works.
And
And
like
I
the pros
like,
and cons of it. And
yeah. And it like we'll get more into it whenever Teo's dad starts talking about some of his points.
mhm.
But so we see that we go to a part of the temple that is untouched until a wrecking ball busts through it. Aang is obviously angry about it, which like he should be. And they're like, they're destroying it for a bathhouse.
Mhm.
And it brings up the like theme of change. And this, I believe it's in this scene whenever Teo's father is like um talking about how, you know, the industrialization and how they're changing things, and Aang's like, well, nature knows when to stop. And he's
Yeah,
like, yeah, but that's not how progress works. Like it just keeps going.
it
And
just
like
keeps going.
there's such a great contrast in this episode of showing that, and like that theme there, and like which is better, if there's a better, or like kind of just like how that will impact the world around it, and like the people having to like adapt to that. um which is a super interesting thing for, again, a like kids show in the mid 2000s to be
Yeah, in
doing.
mid two
Like
thousands, and this
it's
is a big
honestly a
thing. Like we
very,
see in the world constantly too. Like it's always been reflected in the news and everything of
yeah,
people taking these ancient sites and building
a shopping
condos
mall, or like,
and a
yeah.
shopping mall. Yeah,
Yeah.
they paved
um
paradise and put up a parking lot. Like,
yeah. And so he explains that they were refugees from the war. They were lost. They lost Teo's mother, and they found this place and it
mhm.
was empty. And so he found Airbender gliders and wanted to build a new life for his son. And he says that his dad was improving on what was already there, and that is what nature does. And that's when Aang disagrees and says nature
Mhm.
knows when to stop. And so that's when
That's
they have that like back and forth. The guy points to the candles and tells the time, which is hilarious that they
I love
have the
this little
like
bit. Yeah.
he's like, Sokka's like, how could you tell the time? And then he like had firecracker pops in it that will like pop and say the time apparently. And I'm like, this still doesn't even really like, you can't just look at it and know that, like you'll just at a
You have to
certain
wait
point
to
in
hear
time,
that.
you'll,
Yeah.
yeah, you'll be alerted to what time it is. Which is funny.
I was like, can't you use a
Um
sundial? Whatever. He's the
right.
mechanist. He's the smart one.
Yeah. And Aang is upset that nothing is the same, but Teo points out that the creatures that live there are direct descendants of the ones that used to live there. So which is a
Which is
nice like,
so cute.
yeah, it's
I
a they're
love how positive Teo is
yeah,
as a
he's like
character.
completely unfailingly like always trying to look on the bright side of things, like,
Yeah.
which is good. um so then they
It's
also
a
have a,
great comparison with Aang. Sorry. I was just thinking
no,
about
no,
like Aang is supposed to be that, but like really like Teo
but
is
he's
really
like,
truly that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Aang definitely lets his emotions get the better of him in a lot of those instances. And it seems like
Yeah.
Teo, even though like like Teo's like lost his mother and like is a refugee for more and like is in a
Hmm.
wheelchair and stuff, he's like, no, still stuff's still good, like
Yeah.
chilling.
He's so good.
So there's a door that only Aang can open, because it's the
Hmm.
same as one we saw
The
in the
ones that we
southern air
saw
temple.
earlier.
Yeah, where like he has to airbend through it to like open it appropriately. So they don't get in there, but that'll come into play later. Just you wait. And so
Chekhov's gun.
yeah, so Teo's dad shows Sokka some more inventions. We get firefly lanterns that are non-flammable, because there's a room with natural gas and fire will blow it up. Um, and they say they need to find out a way if there's a gas leak. So that's also something that'll come into play.
Hmm.
Um, Teo's explaining how to glide to Katara. She does end up start gliding after being super scared of like attempting it. She's like,
She's so
nah, I
cute.
think I'm good. She's like, I think I'm good actually. Like that's fine. I love how they mentioned to like make sure she closes her mouth so that bugs don't fly into it. And then we get the visual bit of Momo flying and like opening his mouth so that he could eat some bugs,
Eat all the
which is
bugs. I
which is
love
great.
Momo bits. They're so good.
Hey, Aspect listener, enjoying the show?
then be sure to subscribe here on The Aspect so you never miss an episode.
And check out more episodes and clips on our playlist here.
Thanks so much for watching, and
Lemio Hotman.